All right, guys. Thanks for joining us today. I love teaching content calendar classes because when you nail how to forecast and, create a really amazing content calendar for yourself, the weight that will feel lifted off your shoulders is unbelievable. And it's years of refinement because there's always going to be, and this is the one thing I found with AI, there's always going to be a new tool that you can use, something that comes out that might just make it a little bit easier and is different to what you're doing. And it's just always an evolution. And what I'm hoping that I can impart is all of the things not to do, because it can be a really time-consuming exercise to create content. I like to think I've gone the long way around and done it the long way for the longest time. I finally found a formula that seems to really work for me and my team. I actually think this will change even more over the next little while, just with the amount of automations that are kind of coming into play and have been really simplified by a lot of the different tools that we use. But fundamentally, coming up with a content calendar is all about planning what is going to offer your audience value. And every single post or every single content piece that we publish, the reverse engineering of the purpose or the why is like, what is the value that I am giving someone here? And in a class that I taught last week, I said that to them. I'm like, what's the value in each of your content pieces? And I think a lot of the people in the class thought that meant that there needed to be a sales hook, or there needed to be, like, they got value confused with, the call to action. So the call to action being the book now, the purchase now, the sign up, all of that kind of stuff. And while that might, kind of cross boundaries on being a piece of value, I want anyone who's viewing my content to come away with something that they have learned. Like, 80% of my content needs to have an educational foundation. Now, that doesn't mean that the education piece is, just hair tutorials. It's just explaining a piece of knowledge that could be about absolutely anything that is part of that relationship and transaction between you and your client. So, for example, it could be, like the changing of hours to make it more flexible for them to come to their appointments. That's adding value because you're telling them, I'm going to be more available for you. I'm going to make it easier for you to make an appointment. I'm going to show you this hair tip. I'm going to explain what the ingredient in this product is and does. Like, all of that is value. So that's kind of the core of how I look at developing content. And then it's all about, once I understand what the value is that I want to impart, how do I make it different, interesting? When is the best time to publish it? All of those other factors. So I've broken this down into 3 parts. Obviously, strategy is the number one. And for that, I have content pillars, which I'll explain. And then the second part is the workflow. And the workflow is the process and the order of operations that you use to execute really well-delivered content that is optimized for the best possible results. Thirdly, I'm going to talk about implementation and the next steps. And that's more about the tools that you can use, but also, mapping out the process. The best part of this course for you guys is, like, you will literally get the maps delivered in a document, and all you have to do is, like, add your pieces to them and it's done. So you don't need to just learn what I'm saying. I'm just going to give you the samples to fill in and you are away. So hopefully that's my value add for you guys. Okay, so the problem of posting on a whim is it's never consistent, right? And to build that consistency, you have to really dial into your habits. And we've all heard a million times, like, it takes 28 days to form a habit. And I always form my habits by accident because they just seem to be something that happens on repeat. For me, putting a habit in place that I stick to is really, really hard, especially if I don't get dopamine and enjoyment from it. So I've tried to find ways that make this an enjoyable experience for me. And I've found lots of ways that content development piece comes to me a little easier. So a repeatable system, and that's what, really triggers the momentum of the execution. So my rule is 80% of what you produce in content has to have that piece of value, but that doesn't mean you don't get to use 20% of your content to actually have promotion. Without that promotion and without that call to action, where's the return on your investment? So you're going to use 80% of your content to educate, uplift, and, build an online rapport with your clients. But then you get to use 20% of that time in your content delivery to get them to put it into action, whether it be the appointment, the sign up, the referral, the review, all of those things. So I think it's really good to kind of think about that and just have a look at when you're planning your content, is 80% of this purely for the client? Like, am I giving them stuff that is not self-serving? That said, though, there's kind of a little gray area that sits between the two, and it is content as entertainment. And I think there's huge value in that, although it might not be educating the client or giving them something that they can take away with them. That's more of a personal relationship piece. And there are a lot of really amazing hairstylists or hairdressers out there that do content that is entertaining, and their consultations are entertaining. It's like kind of watching a reality show when you're watching them, do that consultation. And I think if you are comfortable and that is your space, utilize that, because the more present you are on your socials, the higher your engagement will be, because there is an emotional reaction that triggers people to like, comment, share, and save. If you are behind the content and, you're kind of forecasting my product of the month, that's not necessarily communicating a relationship between yourself and the client. That's just value. So you still need to have a little bit of you in that content as well to really drive it home and to make it feel personal. Again, the class that I taught the other week, I asked everyone how comfortable they were being front of camera, and pretty much most of the class said, I'm not really comfortable. But 100% of the class identified that that's where we need to be, and that is exactly what our audience is wanting. It's the content that performs the best. So easing your way into that is a bit of a slow process. I'm the first to admit I hate being on camera, but I would rather do less content and actually have me on camera and get me in the moments where I do feel comfortable to do it, then have a whole heap of content that goes out without me on camera that doesn't actually perform. Like, I feel like the investment that I put out, like the energy that it takes for me to record myself and feel vulnerable and be out into, cyberland, that's just as taxing as creating, half a day's worth of content, like content that I'm not in. So if you feel like that, you are not alone. I want everyone to know that this is a challenge that everyone has, except for like 1%. There's extreme extroverts. So if I were to break down the content that you should create that is going to speak best to, our hair and beauty world, is going to be educational. And that can be, and I actually really love creating educational content because I find it so easy. There's so many things that our clients don't know that we assume that they do. Like, I was working with a client the other day and she said, I was at the gym, I was putting dry shampoo in my hair, and the girl next to me said, do you put that in when your hair's dry? I always put my dry shampoo in when my hair's wet. And she said that became this light bulb moment for me, thinking, God, we are not educating our clients enough. So really simple things like that, that you can kind of spin off of, amazing content pieces. A fashion forecast. I try and get in some sort of trend alert or trend forecast at least once a month. And it's so easy because I don't even have to think of it, because there's going to be some celebrity that has some look that I can reference, and that becomes my content piece. The other thing can be, various styling tips, from like the easiest things, like I'm just going to take you on a really quick tutorial of how I clean my irons, which I like to do, probably once a week for me, but for you, it might only be once a month. And I clean the plate. And the reason that I clean the plate is I'm going to get a smoother, more sealed finish on the hair. Clients, bizarrely that their minds are blown by this stuff, all of the things that we take for granted. So that education piece, so much. Then there's the inspirational piece, and that can be like the behind the scenes, the why. And knowing that we're imparting value to our audience. The why explainer that you might be is, one of our core brand values is sustainability. And I just want to explain why we choose to work with this brand. I want to explain why we recycle in such a way and what the benefits of that recycling program is. So that's another piece that can be really great content that's quite inspiring. It ticks all the boxes. Like, it's that personal, it's education, it's, telling the clients the value of you coming in and seeing us means that we're recycling your hair. It's going to oil booms, that sort of thing. The other is community. And I wish I had more time with you guys to talk about community, because it's like I unlocked a secret algorithm within not so much Instagram, because Instagram doesn't have this, but Facebook. And I spoke about this on our last call, where I said utilizing the Facebook community groups is the most amazing way to kind of build a localized community audience. And like, for example, right before I jumped on this call, a client of mine was named finalist in her local business awards. And I'm like, this isn't just going to go on your socials. I'm dropping this in all of your community groups, because I want them to know that you are now, elevated in your profile in the community. So there's that piece, but also community allows you to be interactive. And that's where you're asking for feedback, and you're asking, how can I make your salon experience better? Is it, if you're coming after 5 p.m., you want that glass of sparkling? Would you prefer to have a cocktail or a seasonal cocktail if we change the drinks menu? Would you like it if we had some sort of additional eye mask service for you at the basin as an add-on? I think engaging and getting feedback on that stuff is so great. And then obviously promotional, and that's where you're looking at your return on investment. So that could be your email signups, anything that you're kind of asking your audience to do, but we've just got to be really smart in how we ask for it. So incentivizing them to give a response always really helps. So for example, if we do an education piece, which might be about curly hair and how to twist dry hair, could be, the promotion piece might be, we have a dry curly hair cutting specialist day where we're doing, an add-on tutorial at the end. Please, if you've got a curly friend, tag them in the comments. We'd love to invite them and let them know that you've referred us, so that we can give them, an extra treatment at the basin or an extra long basin experience. So all of those kinds of things are the foundation that's actually going to build your content. And if you're thinking that's a lot to remember, don't worry, because you get all of this, and I've put it all in the slides at the end to show you how to build into it. Okay, so the workflow. I can go into hyperfocus, and I imagine most hairdressers are exactly the same. When you are in the zone, you're in the zone. So you need to create your content and batch your content when it feels right for you. I'm very much about, there's a time and a feeling where you've got creativity and when you've got patience to do these kinds of tasks, and there's times when you don't. And I know I forced myself. I sat at the computer the other night trying to design something. I did not have a creative cell in my body, yet I knew it had to get done. So I'm trying to push myself to come up with something creative, and everything turned out like a dog's breakfast, because I just wasn't in the energetic mindset of creativity. I should have parked it, got up earlier, reset, and done it then. So trying to find a batch of time, and for some people, they can mark it out in their calendar and that works for them. Other people, it needs to be a bit more on a whim. I'm definitely the on a whim kind of person. But what I do is, if I've got something that is, I've got a content set that is running out, I have reminders in my phone that says 5 days until the content runs out. And that does definitely trigger me to like, okay, the next time I am in a bit of a creative mood, I've got to get something done in 5 days. Okay. So when I'm batching, generally what I'll do is I'll come up with like the ideation and I'll brainstorm. I'm not saying that this is going to work for you, and it's pretty old school, but for me, it is a pen and paper and it's creating that mind map. And generally what I'll do is I'll write the month. Okay. So for example, what you'll see at the end is July. And I think about what events have we got coming up in July. But I could probably use a better example, might be something like October, November, because I'm like, okay, I've got Black Friday, Cyber Monday, I can lean into that. I've got 6 weeks out from Christmas. That's going to be a content piece. We've got, the races, and there's kind of community activity around that. I've also got, at that time of year, Halloween. Like, there's just different things that I've got that I just kind of jot down. These are things that are going to be happening over the next few weeks. I might not work with them, but it gives me a sense of where the content needs to go. The other thing that I do with ideation is I just open up the screenshots tab on my phone, because every time I see a piece of content as I'm scrolling through and I'm like, that's a good idea, or I like that messaging, I screenshot it, right? And then I've completely forgotten about it. I'm sure everyone does this. And then I go back to just my screenshots folder and I have a look at all of the things that are in there. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I love the way that they called that the cinnamon blonde face frame. I'm going to use that terminology, but I'm actually going to reference a slightly different image, or, like going back to whatever the article is that I've read, or like, oh, these are the key ingredients. Yes, scalp issues, all of that kind of stuff. So that's amazing too. That's a really good tool. When it comes to caption writing, I'll say something brutally honest, unpopular opinion. I use AI because I have taught AI how to specifically write the way that I want it to. If you haven't had that time or that opportunity to create, I guess, a writing agent in your AI, where you've been able to reference your website, your documents, and all of your previous other captions, which you can just pull straight from Instagram to learn your semantic, then it's going to be able to replicate. It will understand your turn of phrase, how you do questions, the specific words that feel, very comfortable in your vocabulary. It will learn those. So I do use AI, and I've got it down to such a fine art that I probably tweak 10% of what comes up. It is such an amazing time saver. And then the last part is the scheduling tool. I tend to use Meta, as in I have a Meta Business Manager that syncs to both my Facebook, my Instagram, and also my WhatsApp. Maybe we should do a class. Can you remind me? We haven't got one booked in, but WhatsApp marketing is actually really interesting. The way that because I did a deep dive last night, the way that it's working is very much social platform with like video uploads and marketing pieces and broadcast channels. So that's something I'll come back to, but I will use the Meta Business Suite. Now, the reason being is because if I use another platform to schedule, Meta will reduce the amount of organic reach that I get. So if I can kind of contain everything within the platform the way they like it, and I play their game, they reward me with better organic reach. Okay, so this is what I would love you to do as your takeaway and your homework. To have a think about your content pillars. What are they? Then you're going to download the 30-day template, and then you'll find some time over the next little while to sit down and start creating your batch content. This is my July calendar. And what I've done here is I've just kind of written all of the things that are happening across July. There isn't anything that's particularly standing out. This is probably like the worst month of the year for us hairdressers. There's no Mother's Day. There's all of our industry events were in June, but it just gives me a bit of an idea of things I can turn to if I'm stuck. I can actually give you guys the full year calendar if you want it. So if that interests you, let me know, because I forecast this out for a whole year. So I've got all of the dates that are happening in August, and there's things like, like Earth Day and all of the different events that come up that are like things like the Met Gala. those kind of celebrity events that I like to track and be like, okay, well, I know there's going to be a big drop of content that's going to come on that day, and I'm just more aware of it. Melissa, I'm sending it to you. Done. And then I've also got here like different marketing opportunities that I've just kind of added in there. Some of these, I don't think we've got any countdowns here just because there might not be anything happening in August, but I generally will place like a little reminder in here that might say 6 weeks until Father's Day, or, you know, those kinds of things.
Hayley, sorry, just quickly, we've got a couple of stylists in the chat box saying that they definitely would love the calendar. Do you want me to share your email address to them, or is that the best way to communicate? Yeah.
That would be awesome.
There we go.
Okay. All right, I'm back on. Okay, so I'm actually going to just move to this. Now, I know this doesn't look sexy, but I just want to explain this funnel. And I feel like you really need to see it visually. If I explain it with just words, it gets completely lost in translation. Okay, but I'm thinking this is for a massive amount of content, okay? If I were to create a blog, number one, you're probably thinking, why are we blogging? That's so 2013, let that one go. There's a reason. There is a reason. And that's because I can utilize a link from that blog in all of the content that I push through, which just kind of pulls that information from the blog, lets me repurpose with 2 clicks, and I'm done. So it's not about getting views on the blog. Yes, Mommy.
You can see me. Okay. That is the exact reason why we continue doing blogs. That is you to the T, exactly what you said. So what I do is I create the blog. The marketing girls use the blog as the brief to create the content as well. And then if we need to create any other variations of whatever that blog topic was about, they just, like you said, they copy that, they ask, can you da-da-da-da, and because I created it, it comes out almost what they want it to be, and it's only a couple of adjustments or a revision from me. So blog, amazing if you are strategic about it. Yes.
Okay, so like, for example, you just take the URL of the blog that you've posted, you drop it into Facebook, it pulls up the blog. So it's got your image in there and it's got the content, and then maybe you want to tweak the caption a little bit and you can just schedule it. Then you could, I mean, I push it to LinkedIn. You guys might not want to do that. It creates a really seamless funnel for you. So I think of 6 different topics that are going to go on my blog, and I've just got some examples there. Now, those 6 topics actually make up my newsletter, right? So what happens with each piece of the newsletter, so we might have what happened at Hair Festival, and then the button clicks to read the rest on the blog, right? So it's just a short little caption. Here's an overview. If you want to read more, go onto the blog, which means I don't have to design the newsletter because the blog's already done it for me, right? Generally, I'm just cut pasting the exact same text that's in the blog. I'm repurposing the same image that's in the blog, and then I add a button. I am not designing a newsletter from scratch. I'm saving myself about 6 hours there. And then the next blog piece, that could be, you know, one of your value adds. It could be a tutorial or a hair tip, featured key ingredient. The other one might be a staff profile, or guess what? I'm celebrating 30 years in the industry. They can be whatever. But the blog just turned into your newsletter, which also just turned into your Facebook post. But also remember how I said Facebook groups are amazing? You don't have to write the content. All you do is cut paste the URL, drop it in, and it will pull up the image, the caption. You don't have to do it. So it's the best hack ever. And this is what it looks like. The one thing that I will say, though, is there's going to be a little bit of manual work if you're going to do an Instagram carousel. So what I do as a Canva user is I just resize that image so that it works as a carousel. This is basically just the exact same version. I had someone who's like, I don't understand your funnel. I showed them this one and they went, oh, that makes sense now. It's just how you visually see it lining up. So in this one here, I've got week 1. We start with the blog. That blog turns into a reel that turns into a carousel. Then I'm dropping it in the Facebook groups. and then I'm going to save that reel as a highlight. So it's just kind of like that systemized way of how I'm utilizing that blog content. This is a amazing takeaway. I don't need to share it with you, but it's just all of your best practice sizes, times to post, audio and sounds and tips. Feel free to pop in and have a read of that in more detail. This is just some ideas on how to scale your growth. So you might have a different task that you assign yourself every single day when it comes to creating your content. And these are just some ideas. These ones here are just concepts that I go with for my clients, and I'll be like, okay, I want to have a focus for the newsletter each month. This is what I'm thinking. These are the campaigns. And like a campaign is very different to a piece of content because generally it's about a monetized return in some way. So for me, it's generally packaging up some sort of service piece that might contain cuts, colors, whatever. And that's only for a limited period of time. It might be the same with retail, or it might even be the same, like utilize school holidays. Like we're doing heaps of micro color packages for the tweens of the world that we can get the color in, like, 4 or 5 key foils in with a junior team member, can get it in like, 20, 30 minutes and have her in and out so quickly. And while the margin is slightly reduced, you're still making about the same because the appointment time speaks to that. So those are kind of my strategies around that. I have a tracker. So if you wanted to print this out, I just screenshot my followers and like my growth, and then I kind of upload it into AI and get it to give me a report. But if you wanted to do it manually, this is the package that we do for our clients, which is all of the things that I just showed you, but we just do it for them. So use this as a template as well. So like we've got week 1, week 2, week 3, and you'll see that like a lot of these are based on like color technique and really explaining that point of difference in a service. We do a heap of like immersive carousels just to make them like really stand out. You don't need to, but those are my tips. I've gone 2 minutes over, and I've probably gone right on time this time. I was keen to like not go over again. I'm very happy to stay on and answer any questions, but if you need to run, you can always DM me and follow up a little later.
Yeah, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
We can see that we've got some stylists in here, Narelle, Kylie, Taz, Arista. They're all like, me too. So guys, I've just put in Hayley's email address in there. Please copy it, add it to your notes somewhere on your phone, and please reach out to her so she can send that content to you. And does anybody have any questions at all before I share Hayley's next webinar? A little bit of details on that. Any questions? No. Liz, we can see you. Hello. Hey. Okay, now Monday, 3rd of August, Hayley is doing her next webinar utilizing UGC, user-generated content. So I've just added into the chat box now the sign-up form. Tap on it. Please sign up. It is going to be a great one. I have to say this is going to be very interesting because when I was out pounding the pavement as a business development manager for other brands, I used to have a lot of salons going, disaster stories about, getting somebody to come in, they do their hair for free if they post certain things about the salon and the results and things like that, and them just actually not properly getting the returns on that. And so not just that, of course, but also really taking advantage of when clients post their hair results on their own personal page and how you can really take advantage of that. Yes, utilizing UGC, user-generated content, on Monday, 3rd of August, 1:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Hayley, thank you so much. Thank you to everybody.
Pleasure. Bye.
Bye.